Alright, for my discussion on Units 23 and 24, first of all, I have variation. Variation in language means that people have different ways of saying the same thing. First type of variation listed is regional variation. People from different areas using different words for the same thing, like sofa, couch, and apparently Davenport is used for that word, which I didn't even know. Some people say soda, while others say pop, or they just call all of it Coke, or soft drink. I used to know people that called it all Coke, but I don't know. Anyways, some people say bag, while others say sack or poke, and some use the word supper, while others use dinner, and there are many, there are many more different examples, such as in West Virginia and other southern states, we use the word y'all, but in Pennsylvania, they you they say the word use guys. Well, not really word, but excuse me, it just shows different. I mean, even Pennsylvania is just right above West Virginia, yet there's a big difference in the way each of us speaks, um, being West Virginians and Pennsylvanians. Uh, Next is variation is not limited to regional variation. There are other kinds of variation, such as social, ethnic, gender, and age variation. Uh, for example, people from different socioeconomic groups within the same society may speak differently. Excuse me. You know, differences have been described between working class and middle class speakers of American English. Black people speak differently from white people, men speak differently from women, and old people speak differently from young people. That is, it's just facts. Everybody knows these things. Excuse me, there are a whole lot of just phrases and terms that young people have come up with that most old people have no idea what on earth they mean. Um, it's it's confusing to me, honestly. Uh, but and then next, the same kind of variation exists in American Sign Language. Every language has some degree of variation. Excuse me. And ASL, being its own language, is included in that list. Um, in the book, it gives the examples of different ethnic variations in sign language. The white sign for school, school. Black sign for school, school. Uh, there, Black people also sign the words boss and flirt differently. Excuse me, than white people. And as we discussed earlier in the book, uh, men sign differently from women. Um, Apparently, more women will sign deaf like this, while more men will sign deaf like this. I'm not sure if that's 100% true, but excuse me. Uh, and I believe that's it for Unit 23. Next is Unit 24, the functions of language. Excuse me. Language isn't just to communicate information. It's not just used to communicate uh, information. It's also used to establish or reinforce social relations or to control the behavior of other people. The book gives the example of if you're walking on the street and you and an acquaintance make eye contact, you don't even have to be friends with the person. You don't know the person too well. You've met them before. If you made eye contact, it would almost be considered rude not to say anything. So you just say, "Hi, how you doing?" Little nod, half smile, half wave. You literally just flick your hand up down by your waist, and you keep on walking. You don't have to go into a full-fledged conversation, and you don't just ignore them. You say, "Hi, I acknowledged you're right there." I mean, if I didn't, that'd almost be rude because we just made eye contact. Um, excuse me. And then next, these last two are very, very big, important ones to know. The norms and structure of language use. Excuse me. Uh, in a conversation, only one person can sign at a time. That is pretty much a given, because with hearing people, some people can multitask, with their hearing in conversations. They're mainly focused on this one person who's speaking. Like if it's if it's a big group conversation, they're mainly focused on what this person is saying, but they're also listening in on what another person is saying over here. Some people can take it all in and still understand both sides of the conversation. But for sign language, like we learned before, eye contact is a very important thing. You can't, because it's mainly because, especially depending on the person who's signing, like if they are a very fast signer, just looking away for a second, you'll miss a lot of information. And I believe that is one of the reasons why sign language and deaf culture is so big on, is so big on eye contact. You can't be jumping from person to person because you will be missing very large chunks of both conversations. Next is the appropriate behavior when walking between two people who are signing to each other. Hearing people, we've grown up learning that you gotta say excuse me or sorry and duck your head and sort of run through, or at least I've blown it to that proportion. Um, but for deaf people, it just doesn't matter. Walk straight through. If you do any of it, disrupt the conversation, you could bring it to a stop. You could distract them. Just walk straight on through. I've learned that the hard way a few times. And then next is topic. Norms dictate what topics can be discussed in which settings. Obviously, not all topics can be discussed in public. There are some that you better leave for a private setting, just for the sake of other people, really. And there are ways, like hearing people whisper. Deaf people whisper. They drop their offhand, and they just sort of put it down low where it's pretty discreet, and they sign like that to whisper, just to tell them, hey, not now, or discuss anything that needs to be discussed that they wouldn't want other people to know. And next, discourse has internal structure that comes about in different ways. One way is turn taking. Obviously, everybody in a conversation doesn't sign at once. Like, if it's a group conversation, that would just be chaos, really. So you have to take turns, just like in a regular, in a hearing conversation. You can't be speaking over each other. That's just rude. If another person in the conversation self-selects, that person will take the next turn after the first person pauses, telling them, I'm done with that thought. If they don't self-select, the first person can continue on that thought, or just not say anything, and the conversation will end right there. This is another important thing to know for the future, just so we know how to conduct ourselves in these ways. Turn taking varies depending on the setting. In a regular conversation, conversational partners self-select unless one person asks a question of another person. But in a classroom, it's always the teacher, that selects which student to speak. And in a courtroom, the attorney asks The attorney asks questions of the witness on the stand, and the witness answers. They don't usually ask the questions themselves. So those are just a few things that I gathered from these two units. And sorry that it's so late.